Welcome to the FYI by Find Your Influence. My name is Chelsea Goodson. I'm the head of creator economy here at Find Your Influence, and I'm really excited to have you all today and to be jumping into today's topic, which is a Q&A with Find Your Influence. We are going to be talking about, our community, answering questions from a Q&A that we did over on our Instagram page, sharing our thoughts on the future of influencer marketing, what we think 2025 will hold for all content creators, and so much more. But I'd love to introduce you to my guest panelist today. Piper Vazquez is our Director of Client Success and Business Development here at FYI. I've been, had the pleasure of working with Piper for over 6 years now, and I'm thrilled to have you here. Piper, if I could send it over to you to do a little introduction about yourself, that would be amazing.
Yes, of course. Thank you so much. I'm so excited to be here today. I've never done a webinar before, so this will be my first, but really excited to talk all things FYI and influencer marketing. Like you said, I've been here for over 6 years, and it's been such a wild ride since I joined and seeing how the industry has evolved over those years. So I'm really excited to jump in and talk about all the things.
Wonderful. Well, thank you for joining me. It's so good to have you here. Our conversations are generally, with FYI, an influencer, maybe a brand representative, an agency member, things like that. So we don't often get to do these types of conversations, just kind of geared towards FYI. But I'm really excited for this one, a little something different than what we usually do. But before we jump in, I can give a couple of housekeeping items. Just to note that all attendees, your cameras are off and your microphones are muted, so no need to worry there. Our Q&A chat is open throughout the duration of our webinar. We encourage you to leave comments in there, and toward the end of the conversation, we will go ahead and answer any other questions that you happen to have. And with that, we can go ahead and dive in. And maybe just to give a little bit of background, Piper and I worked together to prep some questions that we thought were relevant, not only to Find Your Influence, but also to the industry as well, as mentioned. So I thought we could start with a really fun one where I'd love to pose to you, Piper, about how you got started in your career working in influencer marketing.
Yeah, of course. I actually got my start in the industry working as a social media associate for an online clothing boutique, actually here in Arizona.
Amazing.
And I was one of a few associates. I had my hand in various marketing efforts. It was content creation for our brand channels. I was doing on-set styling for the models for our e-commerce shoots. Let's see, like creating strategies for community engagement as well. We kind of had a large following on social platforms, and so kind of keeping that audience engaged was one thing that I worked on as well. But above all other things that I did there, I managed their influencer relations department. So at the time, paid partnerships weren't as prevalent. This was this was late 2017, early 2018. So it feels a little while ago. Um, but the bulk of our partnerships that we did at the time was gifting. And
Mhm.
I feel like that's pretty common in the fashion category as well, just with, I think, like the smaller scale influencers that we were working with.
Yeah.
But we did grow into seeking paid partnerships and mainly focused on organic brand awareness, high quality content, kind of content plays. So
Mhm.
that was kind of like my first dip into influencer marketing. And then I moved from there to FYI, and that was 6 years ago.
Yes.
And from there, I learned kind of the beauty of performance metrics behind creator content. It's really interesting coming from somewhere that more prioritizes like overall awareness and just quality content over these performance metrics. But have had so much fun learning everything along the way since then.
Love that. Thank you so much for sharing. I could do a very quick run through, I guess, of myself too. I thought I'd throw that out there just for fun. I'm sure many of you who know me or have seen me online have heard me say I've been chronically online since I was basically a tween, and have always had some type of social outlet. But professionally, I right out of college started working at a marketing agency, and I was running social media for one of the largest grocers in the United States. And I was also on their influencer marketing team. So I did a lot of influencer work within the grocery space, food and beverage. And then I was so lucky to join the FYI team in 2015. So I'm coming up on 10 years here. And like Piper, I've been able to learn so much as not only our company has grown, but also the industry as well. Things have changed greatly, as I'm sure many of you have know. And not only, how we talk and work with influencers, but also in just how programs are run. And I'm sure we'll jump into that a little bit more, but it's very different nowadays. But different, I also think is a good thing. And we've really evolved over time. So yeah, just thought I would share that too. And to pitch it back over to you, Piper, I'd love to hear what you think has been the biggest change within the influencer space really over the past 5 or so years.
Yeah, of course. Um, like I said in the beginning, it's been like really crazy seeing all the changes since we started. But I think the biggest change for me was seeing the evolution between organic and paid performance.
Yes.
So a lot of our clients have different goals. Some of them come in and only do organic, and some do paid as well. But some value high quality content, like I was saying before, my previous, and some really look to establish that social presence on social media and raise awareness with their ideal clients, while others
Right.
really strongly focus on driving conversions and tracking that revenue per campaign. So
Mhm.
just seeing the change and kind of the dichotomy between the two different goals has been really interesting for me.
I love that. Well, what about we can kind of touch there. I thought the idea of authenticity and then audience engagement, with authenticity, excuse me, that word always trips me up. That has become more prevalent than ever. I feel like through these, 5, 6, even 10 years, it's the idea of it, I think, is more prevalent than ever, and thus very important to not only the influencer, but the brand. Um, I wanted to ask you, how do you think influencers can maintain a very genuine connection, while they're also promoting products? Because that's kind of the tough space to be in. I'm sure every influencer feels that, but how can you still be authentic to who you are while also working in this space?
Yeah, that's a tough one. Um, Honestly, like someone I think it's different for a lot of people. So, like for you and me, it's pretty easy for us to tell if
Yeah,
someone's doing a partnership or a promotion.
right.
Whereas for maybe someone who is just online for recreation, we're online for recreation and for work.
Hmm.
It's not as easy for them to tell. Um, I always say I can spot a partnership pretty easily.
Yeah.
Um, but I always think a good way to maintain authenticity with partnerships and with like their job being influencing and sharing products. It's kind of
Hmm.
like a trial run.
Yeah.
So with stories, right? Shorter form, smaller pieces of content,
Hmm.
creators can go out there and test the waters on some things, and it's not as high stakes as an in-feed post,
Right.
per se. So I've always been able to pick up, or more recently started to pick up, if a creator is testing something on stories like, hey, I'm trying out this new product. I'm not sure how I feel. Has anyone tried this? What's been your experience? And then if you see a sponsor post on that same product a couple weeks later, it's a good indication that they were testing the waters or trying to enforce that
Right.
authenticity.
Yeah, yeah, I am right there with you, and I appreciate that too. I feel like for many brands, ones we often work with, the hope is that perhaps the person that they're working with has shared their product in an organic piece of content, and that's exactly, a tie-in, I think, to this larger conversation. Them kind of testing the waters, see how their audience likes it. Maybe if it's, if they receive any negative comments, maybe it's not for them and it's something that they can move on from. But generally, I feel like it's a good way to say, oh, I have interest in this product, and later to move forward with a paid partnership. So I love to hear all of that. Um, with audience becoming more selective, what do you think is the key to maintaining like trust between the influencers and their followers? Is that kind of the testing the waters and being so honest through it, or is it something else?
Think it's a little bit of that, but also relatability is really important, I think, to
Yeah.
me as a consumer, but also as someone who's looking out for people who will be effective brand partners.
Mhm.
So being able to relate to your audience is a huge first step in being able to gain their trust.
Right.
Engaging with your audience can be hard sometimes depending on your reach, right?
Yeah.
So you've got millions of followers, you're not consistently able to engage with all of them in a meaningful way every day. And there are tools that come out every day that make that easier.
Yeah.
But I do think platforms that we're more commonly connecting over, places like Instagram and TikTok, they provide great tools, like I was saying before.
Yeah.
So Instagram, for example, they have channels now, these group chats that creators can start with their community, and it's often a smaller collection of people you do have to accept to be a part of a channel.
Mhm.
But it's a more personal avenue to get in touch with your favorite creators. So these
Yeah.
features, they have stickers, polls, Q&As, kind of like what we're doing right now. So
Yeah.
great features to give their fans an opportunity to share their piece.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of the different subscription models that they have now, even just the free communities like you mentioned. I feel like Substack, I'm sure we'll bring that up at another point, but Substack feels like a really genuine way to make a connection. It's kind of going back to those old school blogging days, but there's like a Patreon aspect to it, so it's paid, but it feels much more intimate for some reason. And I'm sure it's because of the community that they've built there, but think there are
Right.
a lot of ways that someone else can connect with their favorite influencer to learn more about their life than perhaps they like show, like you said, just kind of a general feed and maybe not necessarily like in the stories where they might be a bit more personable.
Right. I will say, or I will admit, I'm not as versed on Substack yet as I think I should be, but I
Oh,
do
that's
hear
okay.
a lot. Like I'm hearing a lot
Yeah.
of people. I actually got a question in a broadcast channel for an influencer that I followed, and she was like, "Hey, who's on Substack?" And just asking. I
Yeah.
look into that more because it sounds like it's something that's kind of rising in popularity right now.
Yeah, it is. And it's really changed. And I've watched some of my favorite creators whose blogs that I read forever and forever, some who continuously kept them up, and some that still do along with their Substack, and some who basically abandoned their blogs and then came back and said, "Oh, I'm going to write in Substack now." Which is interesting to me because generally with the blog, you're going to own the domain, the website. Of course, there's more to it than that, but like you own that space. And with Substack, it almost feels a little bit nerve-wracking to myself because that feels more of like a social media, even though it's like much more long form. So it's interesting to see like people ditching their blogs for the Substack, but it is a whole other thing. I'm sure we could go on and on about it. I've been diving deep into it recently too, because I really like that long form. But yeah, definitely would check out Substack. And there's a lot of ways that creators can make, I would say, smaller amounts of money there, but it's over a long term, and then also with like many people reading or wanting to subscribe to them. So interesting and something to check out.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, but let's see, let's go back a little bit, talking about that authenticity part, talking about brands. So we work with brands a lot, and they're often looking to find the best way to ensure that their influencers, are really resonating with their message. Obviously, they want to be working with someone who's like excited and passionate about their product. But from your side, how do you think brands do this? How do they ensure that their message is resonating with the influencers, audience, and then also, obviously themselves, but like the brand's target demographic too? Because sometimes, we hope that they're one and the same, but sometimes there's some overlap there.
Yeah, definitely. That's like the first thing that I want to throw out is like it is important to have those two audiences
Yeah.
aligned fairly closely
Mhm.
between the influencer's organic audience and then the brand's target demographic.
Yeah.
I do think platforms have come a really long way in sharing details about our audiences while still respecting the privacy of its users. We
Yeah.
saw some big changes with platforms in the past couple of years on privacy and pulling back on the information that they do give advertisers and influencers. But these two pieces are still something that I would consider if I was either a brand or a creator, from a creator perspective. is the target demo aligned with people that I consider to be in my audience? And vice versa, the brand. Is this person going to reach the person that I think is going to buy my product or my service? So
Right.
if either party feels that there might not be much overlap, performance-driven partnerships probably aren't the most beneficial in those
Sure.
cases. But in terms of messaging, I think ultimately as the creator, you know your audience best.
Yeah.
So believe that brands value that in a creator partner and are more than likely going to be open to feedback from their creators on how to make that messaging more authentic.
Yeah, and I always encourage that too. There's definitely a bit of a push and pull, I would say, within the conversations, because obviously each brand and each influencer is looking to make sure that the content feels most relevant to them. But I will say having an open conversation is important, and I know we encourage that here as well, and are always looking for the best way to kind of meet in the middle. Um, but wonderful. I would love to switch gears a little bit and talk about trend cycles and campaign strategies. Things are gearing up here already. We're almost into February. I know it's the longest January. I feel like we've seen in quite a long time. Yeah. Um, but curious to hear, how do you see the speed of, influencer marketing and how it's moving aside from this January, I suppose, and those trends evolving over the next few years? Are trends moving fast? Are they moving slow? Are we seeing less of them, or are we kind of seeing an uptick in order to have content created overall?
Yeah, I think this one's a tough one. I could argue for either side. I think
Mm.
previously we saw trends taking a little bit longer to gain traction, but then that shelf life on a trend was a little bit longer. I'm thinking
Right.
5 years ago when we're all locked in our homes and we
Yeah.
were doing the same trends for weeks and weeks and weeks on end.
Yeah.
I do think now trends don't take as long to ramp up, but people are getting bored with them a little bit quicker than
Mhm.
we've seen in the past. So
Yeah.
I do think one thing with content, it's already condensed down quite a bit, like the life cycle of a piece of content. So videos aren't as long. You don't have as many seconds in the beginning to catch your viewers' attention before they move on. Previously,
Right.
you've had at least 10 seconds. Now it's probably like 3 to 5.
Right. Right.
Content's kind of condensing down, but audiences aren't as willing to stay on to see the resolution as long. They're skipping through. TikTok has that feature now you can hold down and listen to something at light speed. So we are
Right.
getting a little bit quicker in our processing of content. But
Yeah.
I do think in the future, we're going to see a trend wanting to go back to more gentle, not as like quick paced content. And I'm
Yeah.
seeing that on some content. I myself am preferring that. Like I
Mhm.
feel more stressed when I'm pushing myself through content quicker and
Right.
seeing that content that like flashes in front of your eyes so quickly, that I'm prioritizing consuming something that's a little bit more long form, a little bit gentler on my mind, is what I'm saying. So I'm thinking we'll probably revert back to that a little bit, but it'll be
Yeah.
interesting how that affects trends and how quickly they rise or fall and whatnot.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm the same with you. Yeah, I will be so curious to see. Obviously, we've had some big changes in platforms, obviously with TikTok's what it's been through the past month or so. I feel like a lot of people I saw were pushing their audiences to YouTube, which is where I think long form content is king. And I know that I myself am a big YouTube person. I've been watching it since the beginning, and I just encourage it. But I'm with you. I think that changes the trends because like you could make a video fairly quick but then you have to like edit, upload. I think there's a lot more to it, and that's going to slow down the trends. But it'll be curious to see where it goes the next few months. Just
Yeah.
knowing that like I think a lot of people jumped over to that platform so quickly. And now I think some people are like, okay, cool, I'm here. I probably should diversify. And then I think some people might abandon it quickly because they're like, oh, it's back. I'm going to go back to my platform because that's probably where they're seeing the brand deals come in. Their audience already is there. So I think that's fair too.
Yeah, absolutely. It's been interesting kind of like seeing who rises in popularity as a creator
Yeah.
and kind of what style they have.
Hmm.
I would say at least for TikTok, a lot of those people who are popular have that really quick, like
Right.
See so much in a flash of an eye that I do think that creators, or not creators, viewers are gonna start having a little bit of fatigue with that. So it'll be interesting to see. That my personal opinion might be projecting on trends and whatnot, but
I don't
that's
know.
I am most interested to see some change.
Yeah, me too. Um, Speaking of that, what kind of role do you think influencers themselves play in creating and driving these trends? Kind of a two-part that, and then like how can brands effectively tap into this, while staying authentic? Because at the end of the day, our creators are the ones creating their content. So is it them that's driving the trends? Is it brands? Is it the audience members? What kind of role do they play in that?
Right. I do think for the most part, kind of answering your latter part of that question,
Yeah,
in my opinion, I'm seeing creators or audience members driving trends, not so much brands.
yeah,
Brands are still looking for a way to meaningfully take a part of trend while also staying within their niche or doing something that is authentic to them. But
right.
um, in terms of a good content creator, I think
Mhm.
a piece of their job is being able to take advantage of and further drive trends as an early adopter.
Right.
Early adopters, or a good early adopter, shares content that they feel is authentic to their storytelling while
Mhm.
also engaging with their communities in these viral conversations.
Yeah.
So always really interesting to see how like a trend comes up and then how it develops per person. Uh,
Right.
but I think I find that these early takes on the popular trends make a trend more relatable and often drive that mass adoption that we need to see in order to sustain that shelf life of the trend.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm right there with you. I was thinking of some different examples were kind of like flying through my head, and I had some big creators come to mind. But there's this one creator on TikTok. His name is like TikTok Dad, and he does lip syncing videos. But they're so him because they're humorous, kind of serious, and then somehow, if anyone else has heard this, he's gotten into talks with Landon Barker, who is Travis Barker from Blink-182's son, and they've done like a collaboration together. And I just think that's so them and authentic to them. I haven't seen a brand really jump in on that just yet, but I'm like, someone has to because it's so, to me at least, it feels very relatable and funny and hits a couple of points that I think anyone could feel as well. But anyways.
I'll have to look him up. I've not seen, you said his name's TikTok Dad.
Yeah, I'll have to send it to you. Yeah, he's great. But I know we were talking about this earlier, but going back to trends and with having them shift so quickly, do you think it's still worthwhile for brands to build, evergreen campaigns that really like stay relevant all year? Or is adaptability, so moving quickly through these trends, kind of the new norm?
I would say it's absolutely still important to build evergreen content.
Yeah.
Going back to that like fatigue that we talked about before,
Mhm.
I personally get tired of scrolling through my feed and just seeing trend and trend and trend. It's
Right.
one track minded all the way through.
Mhm.
Uh, and given that algorithms like TikTok and Instagram are favoring shorter form content,
Mhm.
scrolling through these quick 5-second video trends kind of leaves me feeling like I'm lacking a little bit of substance in the content that I consume.
Mhm.
Not sure if you're the same way. I feel like
Yeah.
I need to learn something if I'm consuming content,
Yeah.
especially like given how much content we consume every day just working.
Right.
But I think including evergreen content into your media mix assures that your audience isn't just experiencing this trend fatigue that you're scrolling.
Right. Yeah, that's smart. I'm right there with you. I love learning. I mean, I love a humorous TikTok too. I mean, there are so many out there, and I feel like no matter what, probably every third scroll that you hit is going to be a humorous video. But I do love taking in some knowledge, whether it's about a recipe, which I feel like you hear a lot now. I think um, a lot of different generations, ours and below us, they're finding recipes online now and saving them there. That's what they're, taking in. They're not looking for like a cookbook in their local library or something. Or they're learning a trade. So they might be figuring out how to create a YouTube video, how to code. Like there's a lot that can be done there, that can also be really beneficial to anyone's future. I mean, people obviously are making careers out of this, in many ways and are very successful. So I think consuming content that is relevant to like what you want to do or that you're interested in, I'm always recommending like teacher algorithm. I think that's super important too.
Yes. I think I'm like trying to remember what they're calling this trend, like edu, it's like education, or not educational, but like
Yeah.
edutorial.
Oh, that makes sense. Yeah.
It's like a new, they have a tab actually, I think they just call it like the STEM tab on TikTok.
Yeah.
You can look at like strictly educational content. So it's really
Mhm.
interesting to see them carve out like a specific place for stuff like that.
Right. I think that's important too, because again, some people are coming because they want to be a little bit more mindless. They want to see fun things, but other people are interested in learning. And I think about the future too. And kids today, I think about my own children. I have a 6-year-old son, and he is well aware of kind of what social media is, really because this is my job and I work in this space. So that's why he's, knows it to an extent. And I'm like, what will it be like for him when he's older? And what will he learn from it? And how will he be able to utilize it in a positive way? Lots to unpack there, but those are the thoughts that come to my mind. Um, Talking about data, I mean, this is huge for us. Data-driven insights and analytics, as influencer marketing today has become more data-driven, excuse me, and I feel like we've seen that in the past 5 or so 6 years. I mean, it's been changing over time as long as it's been around, but really in the past 5 years, I would say 2020 and beyond, it's really gotten a much more specific and necessary to have those data points, honed in on. How do you think brands and influencers can ensure that they're not losing that human touch? I mean, we're all kind of looking for a way to be very data focused, but also how do you allow an influencer to still be who they are or create content that maybe not doesn't hit all of their marks, but creates awareness. I mean, you mentioned it earlier, there's a lot to be said about like awareness campaigns, conversion campaigns. How can we kind of meet in the middle, I suppose, to ensure that there's a balance of both?
Yeah, absolutely. I think for me, like something that I look for in a campaign to make sure that we're maintaining that true connection with an audience is audience sentiment.
Yeah,
So, and it's a really early indicator into how content is being received by
right.
people like we're talking about.
Yeah.
So I love reviewing a campaign's sentiment analysis and kind of like what did our target audience like about this content? What did they not mention in their comments? A lot of them
Right.
have pieces that we think are really going to resonate with an audience, and then they take something completely different from it. So it's really interesting to see in sentiment kind of like where their head is at. It's also a really good place for constructive feedback. But all in all, I think these early reviews on your product or your service before we've even collected any recap data are really important.
Yeah. And I know, in kind of my prep for this conversation, I didn't dive into this very much, but I do think it's important to know just how data focused things are today and really conversion focused. I mean, I would say a couple years ago, every campaign was very awareness focused. You're just driving awareness of the brand, of the product. And today it's really about pushing sales, which is understandable given just where we are in the world and the economy. I think brands are looking for the best way to spend their dollars to ensure that they're receiving back. And I do see that changing at some point. But let me know if you have any other thoughts on that, because I'm kind of in the mindset of it's very important, but I still lean a little bit on the side of that awareness front because I want the influencer to create a piece of content that will, if you see something, you're like, you know what, I saw that they were eating a bag of Skittles and they did something with it that really hit with me. I'm gonna remember that bag of Skittles because I saw it in that video, not necessarily because of the product link that they put out or the sales coupon they gave me, something like that.
Right. I definitely agree. And I think that like specifically for our industry, where we're helping brands go through these campaigns, conversion focused campaigns are becoming really important, really prevalent.
Yeah.
But it's interesting to hear you say that, like, those awareness plays are still important to you, because I we always recommend with our strategy,
Mhm.
awareness plays are really important in the beginning just to establish that
Okay.
trust, relatability,
Yeah.
like what we were talking about before. And then once we're seeing that campaign kind of wrap up, we have our positive sentiment, we have our reviews, we have all of the data on the awareness play, we can move into a conversion focused campaign and then kind of drive down the funnel from there. So that's one way that I think uh,
Yeah.
we've kind of been guiding some clients recently on, or not even recently, in the past couple of years, just in terms of building that strong funnel. So it's
Mhm.
interesting hearing how those two play into each other.
Yeah, absolutely. So, talking about the future, how do you think the role of influencers will evolve over the next 5 or so years? I know that's like, I feel like, pie in the sky. It's you could go as far as anything. It's very wide and open, but I'd love to hear your thoughts there.
Yeah, absolutely. One thing that we haven't talked about yet, or we might have touched on lightly, AI, I think is
Yeah,
really interesting, kind of
yeah,
seeing how that's entered our industry. Not something 5 years ago you would have told me about, and I would have believed that
right.
would be affecting our industry. So it's always
Mhm.
those little things that kind of come up across the years that you don't anticipate will influence.
Right.
But I think it will be interesting to see how AI influences content creators
Mhm.
over the years to come. And I feel like we're already seeing some influencers dabble with it here and there, but as these tools grow and kind of become more sophisticated every day, that's their premise, that they're learning every day and
Right.
every day. It'll be harder to spot kind of where it's being used. So
Right.
and I do think, like, AI comes with a level of responsibility, kind of similar to what we
Agreed.
saw when there was the introduction of editing apps like Facetune.
Right.
Unrealistic and unattainable content resonates with a certain segment of an audience, those who are seeking inspiration and aspirational content. But a
Mhm.
lot of viewers right now seek to see relatable content in their everyday scrolls. So
Yeah.
overall, I'm interested to see kind of what creators do with AI, but overall, I'm hoping to see them do it responsibly.
Yeah, I love that you brought that up. I was just thinking, in each platform nowadays, and specifically YouTube, because I was looking at this yesterday, they ask that you mark if a piece of content was created using AI, and I know TikTok does that as well. Because, like you said, it comes to a point of like, is that real? Does the audience recognize that that's not real? I'm sure we've all heard the stories of our parents or our grandparents seeing
Yeah.
something and thinking it's real and it's not. But like you said, there's a level of responsibility there. And I think that it could be utilized for very positive things.
Mhm.
I feel like most of us have dabbled with it now at some point. I know I myself have dabbled with it and just um, whether it's creating an outline for a blog post or a social media post. I mean, very basic or a recipe. Like you can ask it for recipes. I mean, you could do a million different things to utilize it. It doesn't have to necessarily be like on video. I know there are a lot of AI creators specifically, so an individual who is built by AI who's a creator as well. I feel like that's really interesting, and we're seeing the growth in that continue. But I'm with you. I'm curious to see where that goes, and then also I'm so curious about the trajectory of platforms because 5 years ago, I feel like if you would have said people are really only going to have like the 2 to 3 second span, they're going to want to watch those really quick videos, I would have been like, no way. I think long form is here. And again, we're reverting back, I think, to long form content, but there's got to be something else. What's next? What's the next thing that's going to pull people in?
Mhm.
Um, I'm not quite sure what that is yet, but I'm sure there will be something to come.
Yeah, definitely. I'm still laughing in my head about something you said with AI and an older demographic not being able to recognize what's real and what's not. Um, Being in the industry that I'm in and exposed to so much content, I think
Mhm.
I embarrassingly enough fall into that category where sometimes
It's
I don't
okay. It happens to all of us.
yeah, I don't catch it. I've had to have my husband a couple of times tell me it's like that is absolutely not real. But on the flip, I have had to tell him he's seen things in the news, and I know you and I talked about it, where he was like, "Look, this happened," and I was like, "That's not real at all."
Yeah, I mean, AI is really infiltrated, excuse me, all areas, like across, not even influencing, but everything else. I think we all know that too. But yeah, it is hard. I think when you especially look at it every day too, sometimes it becomes harder to spot because your eyes are so used to it.
They're getting good for
Yeah.
sure. Like it's everywhere. So I'm curious to see, like, will it continue to be everywhere in the next 5 years, or are we going to get bored of it at some point and,
Right.
have a revolution against it? I don't know, but I'm really interested to see what happens.
Yeah. So again, speaking to the future, what kind of emerging trends do you think in influencer marketing will have the biggest impact within the coming years? Whether it's a trend that's already going on or one that you would like to see.
Yeah. I actually was thinking of one that was kind of already going on. I don't think that it has as much traction as I think it should. But something that I've found really interesting is that faceless marketing trend.
Oh,
I think it really encourages those who have something of value to share with their
right.
audience, that they can do that without having to be well versed or even presentable on camera. So I do think a lot of people, myself included, excuse me, I'm getting over
You're
this.
good. Take a break. I'll throw it out there. If anyone has any questions, feel free to put them in the chat too. We'd love to answer those once we wrapped up here. So please go ahead and put your questions in the QA.
Awesome. Um, I was saying myself included, I feel like a lot of people have like a fear of judgment that comes with being a content creator that sometimes prevents us from taking that plunge into a career in influencing. But that's kind of mitigated with this faceless marketing trend. So I really envision accounts that are focused on curating like a feeling or a vibe, instead of a personal brand based off of your personality, will increase in popularity. So I'm excited to see that. And I already follow some accounts that I think do it really well.
No, that's interesting. I don't personally follow any of those, but there is a creator that I follow who is a polymer clay artist. And she started, I guess I followed her at that point. She started her account being more faceless and it was more so about what she was creating. Nowadays, she's very front and center. She's kind of adapted her content to show a bit more about her personal life, things like that. But she, in a recent video, was telling her audience, if you want to do this, but you don't want to be on camera, like it's okay. You don't have to put yourself out there. And like you said, I think there's definitely a level of fear I think that many of us face, even those who post online. It's kind of like, oh, well, will that come off the right way? Or am I presentable enough? I mean, there are a lot of different layers in there that I think people utilize, like hold themselves back from posting. But I will be really curious to see those too. I think there's a lot of benefit to that in the way of education to teaching things. I think we've already been talking about that, but what more can we be taught without having someone feel like they have to put on kind of a front, or show their face if they don't feel comfortable necessarily front, but show who they are. If they're so knowledgeable in an area, just kind of let the conversation speak for itself.
Right. Absolutely. I
Yeah.
think like one other area too, because you're talking about emerging trends.
Yeah.
I know we've seen recently everything that's going on with TikTok and kind of how that like instability of a platform provides a little bit of fear for small business owners, content
Right.
creators alike. I'm interested to see. I think influencer owned social media spaces will be something
Yeah.
that we'll start to see turn up, kind
Yeah.
of leading back to Substack and Patreon and platforms like that we were talking about earlier. Um,
Mhm.
we already have so many social media spaces that are owned by tech companies. Um,
Right.
and have seen how kind of that uncertainty of that platform has an impact on revenue and people's livelihoods. So I think some
Right.
creators will begin to explore kind of creating their own space, where that uncertainty is lifted and the cards are maybe stacked in their favor in terms of visibility and being
Right.
able to know the algorithm on their end. I know that's something
Yeah.
we talk about a lot
Mhm.
as marketers and then people who work with creators, is how can we get that algorithm to work in our favor? And it's different
Yeah.
from platform, which can be so much information to carry. So
Right.
I'll be interested to see kind of if we can find that creator who's willing to go out there and make that platform that's like creator owned and
Yeah. That would be amazing. I am here for it. I'm trying to think. I don't know of any platforms out there that have been specifically created by creators for creators. I'm sure there are many that have had a hands in it, and I feel like more recently too, there's been a bigger push for, I would say, less populated online social spaces as well. So I'm sure with that will come many others, and I'm right there with you. I think that will be a really interesting thing to explore. You talked about like small business owners too. I feel like that was a big fear with TikTok Shop and TikTok Live was many of those small business owners who are acting as creators, but also business owners and making their living off of that space. I'm curious to see how that kind of transforms, these small business owners and how they're sharing their products with their audience members and their purchasers, things like that. I wonder if we'll get pushed back to email marketing. I feel like Substack kind of for me goes into the email category because they have an email that you get pushed. You can do it in different ways, but whether it's like once a week or whenever a post is shared, things like that. But I'll be curious to see how that goes. I only recently found out one of my favorite like luxury cool brands that I just like love to look at. It's called Totem. It was created by kind of an OG fashion influencer. And I didn't know that, which is really cool just to hear and see kind of the transformation over time. So going from, a fashion influencer who in early on days had no paid partnerships, was not working with affiliate links. It was very different. And now she has I'm sure is $1 billion brand that is thriving. So I'm sure she is one of many, and I'll be curious to see where those stories go to. I think from this change, people are being pushed to kind of continue forward in other efforts as well.
Yeah, carve their own space. Like we were talking about with blog, like
Yeah.
blog will always be there. And like I will throw out there, you like made me aware of that aspect of a blog so long ago. Like you almost envision, and we've always said, like, what if Instagram goes away? Like it's always been, what if Instagram
Yeah.
goes away?
Yeah.
Um, I don't know. I think there's something to that you've predicted a long time coming that
Thank
people
you.
need to have platforms that we can
Yeah.
control.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. I'm always looking out for our creators because I know at the end of the day, no one wants to see their content just go offline and be gone. I mean, we saw it with Vine. I have a favorite creator who was on Vine. I know you and I both love Vine. Her name is Lauren Giraldo, and I think she's called like Pink Princess or
Yeah,
Lauren Princess Lauren. I think that's what her
all of
name
her
is.
still now.
Yes, yeah, she was huge on Vine and basically had her whole platform just taken away from her in an instance and has really grown back her social following, has grown in many other ways. She has the 12-3-30, so she's built something for her that's outside of social. I mean, that's a workout, physical workout that anyone can do just about anywhere. So curious to see where that goes. But I see a question too, and I'm excited to get to it, but they're asking about other social channels we would recommend. So I'm excited to get to that. I know we're coming up on time pretty soon, but I've got two other questions I thought we could go through quickly, and then we can skip to the Q&A. So talking about collaborating with creators effectively, what do you think the benefits are to working with a mix of influencer tiers on a single campaign? So with someone who might have a very large following to a much smaller following, and um, maybe two-parter, how can brands effectively manage those collaborations?
Yeah, of course. Really good question. I feel like we do get this a lot from our brand partners as well. Like, who should I be working with? Should I be working with someone higher reaching or a smaller following?
Hmm.
There's a benefit to both. Uh,
Right.
but I think the biggest difference we see with tiers is their level of engagement or their loyalty to their audience. I always recommend smaller creators who have done the work to form and maintain those tight-knit connections with their audiences for conversion-focused campaigns, just because their audiences are more likely to trust. They have like an open connection with them, more willing to buy, put their dollar behind their opinion on that person.
Yeah.
Whereas a larger creator, did start as a smaller creator at some point, but they've kind of lost that ability to connect meaningfully with everyone at scale.
Mhm.
Those creators are more willing to actively and meaningfully engage or have their audiences engage with their content. So, uh,
Right.
like a large creator sharing about your brand is more likely to drive consideration and awareness
Mhm.
um, than a smaller creator. So audiences often view these larger creators as more exclusive to partner with, kind of giving them that illusion that they're more selective about their partnerships. And
Sure.
while I think this could be true, I think a lot of brands lack that notoriety or community that trust or don't consider large creators in their media mix because of
Mm.
stigma in their rates. So
Sure.
I'm always saying just because you're a smaller brand, smaller budget doesn't mean that you can't afford working with those larger creators, but your goal should be with those people, mass awareness, trust, and consideration.
Yeah, absolutely. Maybe to wrap things up, what metrics or KPIs do you focus on when you're determining, whether a collaboration is successful or has been successful? I feel like that's a big question that we get asked pretty often is, how do I know if this was successful, both from the brand front and I would say from the influencer front?
Yeah, absolutely. I know we touched on conversion focused campaigns a little bit earlier, but I want to throw out there, like, I do think that these metrics depend on the goal
Sure.
of the campaign or the type of campaign. So a couple different types of metrics I think that we look like when we're trying to measure a successful campaign. Um, Large majority are focused on conversions. So right now, sales, signups, leads, subscriptions, you name it. For successful conversion campaigns, I personally look for a strong CTR or a strong click-through rate
Right.
to ensure that our content has captured the audience's interest.
Hmm.
Another metric that I think we look to measure would be a CPA, a cost per action or a cost per acquisition, depending on
Hmm.
what your metric is. Oftentimes, clients have a goal to keep their CPA below the cost of their product or service.
Hmm.
So a positive return on their ad spend would be more competitive than what they would achieve with organic traffic. Um,
Right.
so CTR, CPA, if I can get with the lingo in there, those are the two things that I would personally look at for conversion
Yeah.
campaigns.
Yeah, no, that's perfect. Great thing to take note for our influencer community involved and on today. I know I had a couple of other questions here, but our time is moving quickly, and I've got some questions from our community who sent in their questions via Instagram. Then we've got some in the Q&A. But maybe if we can jump into those before we wrap up here. Let's do a fun one. What's your favorite thing about working in the influencer marketing space?
Ooh, I love that. Because I truly do like love this space and I have for so long.
Yeah.
There's always something new, whether there's a new trend or a new platform or an update to an old platform,
Right.
new brands, new creators, like always something new, always something to learn. I
Mhm.
personally am someone who really, really wants to continue learning and prioritizes that in my everyday life, not just professionally, but like offline as well. So I think that that kind of provides me that opportunity to scratch that itch. So
Mhm.
I would say that like there is always something new to be doing, to learn, to test out is one of the things I like the most.
Sure. Okay. Last one from our Instagram community, and then I'll jump to the other ones. But do you have any favorite creators that we all should follow? I feel like you always have the best recommendations, and so
Oh,
many, I'm sure.
like I cycle through people pretty quickly, which like is something that I'm trying to change about myself because I am exposed to so many creators that like it's hard to keep track of all the people that I do like. Uh,
Sure.
but right now, I feel like people who are making their personalities their brands,
Yeah.
people like Jake Shane, Christina Kirkman. I'm not sure if you're familiar with her by name. She blonde, has like really curly hair, and she has two daughters.
Right. Right. You're right. I've seen her. Yes.
Yes, she's just funny and like you don't have to know everything about her to be able to like jump in and enjoy her content. So
Yeah.
I feel like people who don't niche down and kind of make their personalities their brand, I'm really vibing on right now.
Yeah.
One person outside of that like just fashion beauty niche that I really like is Brooke Puth. She's Charlie Puth's wife.
Gotcha.
Throw her out there. I think she's really cool.
All right. Well, I'm sure our audience members took notes, but those are some great recommendations, and I appreciate you sharing them with them. We have a question that says, do mostly UGC and Amazon influencer? Oh, she does. I do mostly, excuse me. I do mostly UGC and Amazon influencing. I would like to see more of those opportunities. That's something you may be offering. So asking us a question, I would say about our campaigns and about what we do here. Piper, feel free to jump in on that one. But the answer is yes.
Yeah, absolutely. I really believe in the power of UGC. I know that a lot of brands are still trying to rationalize that. And I do think that there are brands out there that have already dipped into that and see the value in that. But I personally, like as a marketer and working with brands and advising them on their strategy, do see the value in that and just kind of am encouraging that adoption. So I think we're early on in that like emergence of UGC. But I do think it's something that we're going to be looking to do a lot more this year and in the years to come.
Yeah, I agree. This individual asked, what other apps do we recommend for influencers to use outside of TikTok or Instagram? And they said, for example, your thoughts on Snapchat. Let me know your thoughts, Harry. Feel free to jump in. But I feel like Substack, we've already said that so much, but Substack, it's a great one. Definitely check it out if you haven't yet. It's long form content, but in a much more laid back way, I would say.
Yeah, I would say Substack. Sorry, I'm having issues with that one. But also Pinterest. We're doing
Nice.
a lot
Yeah,
right now on Pinterest,
absolutely.
and feel like a lot of brands are also doing a lot on Pinterest, and their algorithm is so much different than a normal social media platform. We often don't say it's a social media platform. We say it's a search engine community.
Right.
So I would throw out Pinterest. I think a lot more people need to be giving that a chance.
Yeah, I can attest to that. I completely agree. And then to wrap things up, that said, will brands continue to activate on TikTok given the semi-ban still in effect? Feel free to jump in, Piper, but I feel like currently, yes, TBD to what's to come as things change, I would say.
Yeah, I agree. We're seeing brands who are looking to activate on them even with the ban that we had in place a couple weeks ago.
Yeah,
Um, so I would say for now, yes. And we're all hopeful at FYI that something will get worked out and we won't be
right,
saying goodbye to that platform. Um,
right.
but I would still be staying attuned to opportunities that are there.
Yep, yep, I agree. Well, right before the hour, we covered a lot today, and it's really safe to say that we could chat for hours. I know Piper and I often have long conversations about many of these things here. So I'm so appreciative of you, Piper, and thank you for joining me and for having this really awesome conversation. I wanted to throw it out there that you can find both Piper and myself on LinkedIn. Would encourage you to reach out and connect. We are both very passionate about the influencer space and work hand in hand with our influencers and our accounts here as well. So all of your favorite brands, we get to work with them also, and we'd love to work with you. We invite you to continue the conversation. We have a Facebook group. It's under the FYI by Find Your Influence. And then stay tuned for next month webinar. We will be announcing it very soon. I hope everyone has a wonderful afternoon. And again, thank you, Piper, so very much for joining me today.
Yeah, of course. Thank you so much for having me. This was so fun.
Yes, it was. Thanks, everyone. We appreciate you and your time. Have a great Friday and a great weekend, and we will talk to you very soon.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Take care.
Bye.